We were moaning last week that the weather was too hot, so we can moan about how the weather's miserable today.
Hello and welcome to the FilmFile. As the man said, episode 80. I'm Lee Ford.
And I'm Andy Meakin.
What you can't see then was Andy was just taking a big stretch just before he introduced himself to the world.
I'm not used to recording this early.
A lot earlier than we normally do. We normally record it early evening, and this time we've decided so we could have the rest of the day free to frolic in the sunshine, or lack of it.
Yeah.
Because last week we moaned about the sun. This week we're moaning that there isn't any, and Andy's got a day off. So we're doing this early. So we might be a bit croaky, but we are here. This week's deep dive takes us back to the heady days of 1999. I can't believe that this film is over 20 years old. And when I did my research for it, I absolutely was aghast because this film left its mark, both intellectually and at times physically. We're talking about David Fincher's very dark Fight Club. Based upon Chuck Palahniuk's novel of the same name, Fight Club, directed by David Fincher, starring Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, and Helena Bonham Carter. It was right, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's your turn to flub the names this week.
Yeah, and it was a simple one. Is the story of an unnamed narrator played by Norton, who is disconnected with his white-collar job. He forms Fight Club with soap salesman Tyler Durden, played by Brad Pitt, and becomes embroiled in a relationship with a destitute woman. The film takes you into an examination of postmodern advertising. It takes you into a world of postmodern masculinity. But of course, we can't talk about that. This is a film that when I saw it, I couldn't believe what I was watching. This film felt bold in a way that a film had not felt bold since 1970s cinema. This film played with some big ideas, and it was kind of a coming-of-an-age story for those sorts of people who didn't know where they were in the world. Dramatic, stunning looking, and still has an impact to this day. Andy, Fight Club. Can you talk about it?
We're going to talk about it. And a quick warning to anyone who's not watched this film that's over 20 years old.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
That you can't talk about Fight Club without dropping some spoilers, because we need to talk about the twist, and we'll talk about it a bit later on. If you've not seen it yet, seriously, you can't have been that bothered. Or if you've just not got round to it, pause this, go watch it, come back, continue listening. Either that, or just accept you're never going to watch it and just be educated on it so you can impress your friends and pretend you have with what we tell you. So let me start off by saying that this is one of those films adapted from a book that I hadn't read the book before it came out, but I've read the book since, that is actually better than the book that inspired it.
I agree.
Even the book writer, whose surname I always struggle with, so I'll just call him Chuck, has said so. Indeed, the follow-up graphic novel that he went on to write over the past few years, whilst it picks up the events from the end of the book, it adopts the style and flow of the film a lot more than the book. And who can blame him for doing so, as the film is not only a fantastic twisty tale of mayhem, but it's a masterclass in cinematic technique. Right from the opening scene, when I saw this on the big screen on its very limited release, and I pretty much was the only person in the audience of the screening that I went to, the thumping score by the Dust Brothers kicked in as we pull out from a CGI manifestation of the molecules and cells in skin through a bead of sweat along a gun barrel until we see that it's lodged in the mouth of Ed Norton's narrator. And at that point, I was like, what have I walked into? And I was in. I was straight away, as the narrator, Ed Norton, starts to talk about how he met Tyler Durden and his life was changed from the mundane existence into one of peril, danger, and secret underground clubs. I was in. I was hooked right from that start and drawn along. Now, On the reveal, on the big twist, the reveal moment when the narrator follows trails of clues to track down where Tyler's gone to later in the film, it completely caught me off guard. And what a twist. The manner in which it's revealed that Tyler is the narrator makes full use of the moment. In many films, once you know the twist, the film starts to diminish on repeat viewings. It either makes no sense on reflection, I'm looking at you, Jeepers Creepers, why on earth would a flying creature need a chuffing truck? Or the clues are more cinematic conventions which reveal that the story itself doesn't work on its own. Sixth Sense, great twist, but it makes no sense when you look back on it because a lot of the setups of the scenes rely on you as an audience perceiving that things have taken place beforehand. But here, revisits of this film, of which it's every year for me at least, surprise me each time with more minor details that I didn't spot. Subtle reactions of others around the pair when they're talking. The side of the car they crash and he climbs out. Ed Norton crawls out from the driver's side even though he wasn't the driver. Tyler was the driver. He was Tyler. Most of all, the biggest clue that I only spotted about 6 years ago was that he meets Marla early on in the film, way before Tyler has entered his life, and they exchange numbers. When she eventually calls that number to ask for his help, whose phone rings? Tyler's, in Tyler's apartment, in Tyler's house that Tyler's been living in, not the narrator. And that should have signified it. But I missed every single one of these clues because they're so perfectly placed that it just feels like a natural part of the story.
Me too,
But
Andy. I'm absolutely with you on that one. It was a great reveal. In fact, it's the way it's done also becomes a purely cinematic reveal as well, because the film goes crazy as the narrator does when he puts all the clues together. It's just one of those fantastic moments. And you're right, you go back and you can join the clues. It does make sense because it's they are so well placed and but who would think it? Who would think that those two characters are the same character? And that's when it works. It works wonderfully. It's a stunning piece of cinema reveal.
It's important to say that this film is more than just the twist. It's more than just a story of a man with split personalities. It's a deconstruction of the place modern man has in the world. It's a stab at consumer culture. It's a cynical revolution against corporate America, all rolled into one. The Fight Club of the title starts as a way to feel more like the hunter-gatherer male, regain some of that artificial sense of worth. But it evolves into a statement against capitalism with plots to strike out at society. And it's very dark, but it's also very, very funny. It knows when to use the humour.
And that's why it gained a lot of its controversy, because this film could be interpreted in many, many different ways. You can, depending on your political point of view, as well interpret it in many different ways. You can see it as a cry for fascism, if you wish so, when Tyler Durden puts his Project Mayhem into the works. It can be seen as Edward Norton says, it's examines Generation X angst, the middle children of history, and the values and conflicts of that particular generation, where you're fighting against consumerism to try and find yourself. So it could be seen as an almost a communist ideal. There are so many different elements that you can bring to this particular movie, depending on your own ideology. And I think that's what makes it and I mean this in a perfectly good way, a dangerous film. And a dangerous film because it makes you think and consider, and that it is a metaphor for whatever ideal that you bring to it, whether that's a push against having expensive furniture, or what it means to be happy, or what it means to be a man. You can bring that, and it's almost a Chinese wall Fight Club. You write on it what you think is your ideology. And I guess that makes it dangerous to some extent, because you are having to think for yourself and reach conclusions within it. But that's what makes it a clever, clever film.
The casting in this film is magnificent. Edward Norton has never been better, as far as I'm concerned. Brad Pitt is energetic and fun as the alter ego. Helena Bonham Carter steals every moment that she's in. with subtle nuance to her performance, that even just a simple eye roll that she does adds so many layers to what she's actually saying at the time that she does it. It's great casting. You've even got Meatloaf in there, and you've got an early outing for Jared Leto, who I completely forgot was in this film until Jared Leto started becoming a bit more of a name, and it was like, oh yeah, he was in that. He got 7 Shades beaten out of him in Fight Club. And it all comes together beautifully because of the direction. The direction is so meticulously planned out. The integration of CGI scenes with real life scenes is so perfect that the CGI elements stand up so well today. There's the love scene between Tyler and Marla. The love scene between Tyler and Marla. That was all CGI. And it looks so brutally real.
And twisted as well. Absolutely twisted.
Yeah. The distortions to the frame, the cinematic techniques, the pointing out of burn marks in the top corner of the print, the single frame usage, all the cinematic techniques that you can learn about are embedded within this film and become part of the film, part of the narration, and part of the actual engagement. Yet there's a fourth wall breaking moment when Tyler turns and talks to the audience, and you accept it. Even though it's not supposed to be a fourth wall breaking film, it works because you feel that at some level, Tyler's message is to you. And that's what makes this film work, is that, like you said, you can interpret it from whatever perception that you have. And that's because Tyler's words work for everyone.
I had the great pleasure to interview Chuck Palahniuk a few years ago, and he talked ostensibly about actually Fight Club 2 and as a comic book release. But, you know, as you said, he was very, very happy with how the film turned out, and much more so than any of his other film adaptations.
Yeah.
And as a film, it could have gone many, many different ways. At one point, Peter Jackson was considered the best choice to do it, but he was busy doing The Frighteners. Bryan Singer was considered. Danny Boyle, who would have made an interesting film, especially off the back end of Trainspotting. But of course, it went to David Fincher, who'd had an unpleasant experience with 20th Century Fox, who were the production company behind it. Sorry, who were the distributors behind it after directing Alien 3. But he was the right guy in every sense of the word. He brought that indie film renegade feel to the movie, and it just made everything click. He was looking for a hit after Seven. He had a relationship with Brad Pitt. Everything about this, and to me, it's still his best film to today. I don't think he's surpassed it, and I think he's done some great work. But I think he's absolutely nailed. It was one of those perfect storm movies. Great casting. I mean, at one point, Russell Crowe was considered to play Tyler Durden. Matt Damon was on the list, but again, the perfect storm. Edward Norton, Brad Pitt, David Fincher, Helena Bonham Carter, and they just make this film absolutely work.
A quick mention for the music score for the film from the Dust Brothers. As perfectly matched to the events of this film as Daft Punk's soundtrack were to Tron Legacy. I cannot imagine this film with any music other than the electronic mesh and molding of different types of conventions into the soundtrack. The soundtrack itself is a great listen on its own, but as you're listening to it, you feel the same kind of emotions that the scenes in which it was overlaid was used. Marvelous stuff.
Fantastic. The great, probably its greatest legacy is that everyone knows about Fight Club but can't talk about it. In fact, one of my favorite memes is I went to this new thing called Fight Club last night. I was an hour late, so I missed some of the rules, but I've got to tell you about it. It's absolutely fantastic.
Brilliant.
If you've not had a chance to check out Fight Club, then you should as a film geek. It is probably one of the heights of film geekdom that we've covered. It is available on Blu-ray. There was a DVD cut which was slightly shortened for violence in the UK, but I think that was restored for the Blu-ray. Andy, anywhere else we can find Fight Club if we are we haven't seen it and we are desperate to watch it?
Yes, it is, and I can't remember which service it's on, but it's definitely on one. Hang on a second.
Is it on Netflix?
Available on Amazon Prime.
And is available.
Yes,
Sorry, your
yes,
line.
yeah, because you asked me the question, so I might as well answer it. Yes, it's currently available in the UK on Amazon Prime. It only popped up there about a week and a half ago, so that was perfect timing.
Absolutely, and be prepared if you've not seen it. Be prepared if you've not seen it to have your mind well and truly blown.